Terry, I wasn't meaning to ignore your email, but I did. Sorry. But maybe after the meeting, we could talk.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to see if Ted could stay for a few minutes, too.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Good.
I have to think about that. That's not a meeting, is it?
It's three, yes.
I mean, if we talk about this, I mean, or I could talk to you separately, yeah. I just want to get his opinion, input.
Yeah, well, that would be good.
This I haven't. So my wife, for some reason, I shouldn't say for some reason we notice it, but loves the windows you put in.
Oh, thanks,
In
yeah.
your house.
Yeah, they, hot topic for a bit.
Sure.
Glad he,
You went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, is Ted not in tonight?
Oh, he's here, Joy's not here.
There's another sheet.
Well, good, okay.
Yeah, they were original.
Were they?
Time ready? All set? Okay. So I'll call the meeting to order. It is 7 o'clock by my watch. First on the agenda, of course, are the minutes. We have the minutes of November 19th, 2019 to approve. Is there a motion?
Move we approve the minutes, subject to modification.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Page 1. On page 1, at the last line, Scott Moody was not here, and Aiden White for Channel 17 was our camera guy that night. Page 2. Page 3. And page 4. Hearing no further comments, those in favor of approving the minutes of November 19th, 2019, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed and no abstentions? We certainly do have a quorum tonight. We're missing one of our members tonight. Joy Limoge is out of town, I believe. And we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to make any comment on anything that's on the agenda or not on the agenda? Seeing no hands raised, we'll move on to item number 4, the Lake Iroquois Association Annual Report. We have President Chris Conant with us tonight, and I can't remember the other man's name. Jamie, is that right?
Roger Kraus.
Good evening.
Thank you for the early placement on the agenda.
It's even earlier, so.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Roger is a board member with us and came to show moral support, which is great, and lives on BB Lane. Thank you again for having me back and us back, and both Eric and Rick have been amazing communicators and with me and the board, and we have been in front of you a number of times, and I want to be honest and tell you that we really appreciate the working relationship and the mutual respect that is shown to our organization. We appreciate the working relationship that the town manager's office has with Lake Iroquois Association, and the staff is always willing to work with us in any fashion, and we really appreciate that. And we've always felt welcome whenever we've come into this building, and we really want you to know how much that is appreciated. Lots going on in Lake Iroquois, as you know. There is a lot of work to be done. We have a significant milfoil problem on the lake, and as you know, we've come in front of this board a number of times talking about funding and talking about permitting for potential herbicide use in the lake. And I'll be honest, today is my third formal meeting with municipalities. We've met with Richmond and with Heinsberg thus far. And we're sharing information about a new product called Procelicor, which is a herbicide that is being used in the state of Vermont, was used in 4 lakes here this last 2019 season. And Procelicor is an herbicide that is specifically targeting milfoil. And the 4 lakes that were, that it was used in was Lake Maury, Lake St. Catherine, Lake Hortonia, and Burr Pond. Those are the 4 that it was used. And with the blessing of both the DEC and the Health Department, they saw immediate results and significant results in the control or the loss of milfoil during that process. We are at the initial stages of looking into the process, and I'll be honest with you, you're gonna probably get sick of seeing us because we're gonna come in front of you and share a lot of information with the community about Procelicor and about the process. There's a group of us called the Lake Iroquois Milfoil Action Committee, which is a group of 6 board members that are specifically working on the opportunity of working on with another herbicide permit. And we are just in the initial stages of that. And whether or not, number one, whether or not we can afford to go through the process. Number 2, whether or not the state is going to be willing to let us go through the application process again, and most importantly, whether the communities will allow it. Quite controversial, but at the same time, I'm going to tell you that we're a mess over there. And I know that I've had conversations with a few of you, and we are what we would say to the majority of the people that we communicate with is that we're a lake in crisis. And I've got a few pictures I'm going to just share with you here, just for the public viewing. I know a number of you have been on the lake, but the milfoil has gotten to the point where it's so out of control that it's affecting both the safety and the health of lake users. And when I say the safety, we've literally had to pull a few people out of using that lake, out of swimming, because of the way it does kind of engulf you. I've yanked multiple sailboats out of the middle of that milfoil problem, and we have had a number of people stop coming into the lake because of the problem. So long story short, we have got a lot of work ahead of us, and I'm not going to lie to you, it's going to be a uphill battle to be able to conquer the project, because it is, number one, a lot of money to do this, and number 2, it's going to take a lot of time and effort. And being all volunteers, we've got a lot of work ahead of us to decide whether we can afford to move forward in the process. But we're not going to give up. We feel that this product that the state is allowing to be used now is, to be honest, is safer than the other chemicals that have been introduced, and the turnaround time is quicker. The half-life of the product is quicker, so that it does dissipate with sunlight, and so we feel that there's a good opportunity here, but we've got a lot of work to do. So with your permission, I'm going to come in front of you hopefully in January with a full presentation just on the opportunity, and be able to share as much as I can with you, and the board, our board will be here to make sure that everybody is informed. We're going to start a series of public hearings or public meetings that will be communicating with the public. So I want to just show you a couple pictures, and many of you have had the opportunity of being on the lake this summer, but and I'll hopefully be able to show you these pictures. So these were taken by a volunteer photographer of ours that works with us. His name is Pogo Senior, and he actually does drone photos for us and has been doing this for a number of years for us. And so this hard cake, 4-inch thick, is the end of the summer results of the milfoil. Number one, the beach use, the Lake Iroquois Recreation District use, revenues have dropped significantly, and I'll give you just a little bit of a history. Since 2014, our revenues at the beach have gone from 19,000 to 2015 to 23,000, 2016 to 28,000, 2017 to 13,000, 2018 to 11,000, 2019 to be somewhere between 11 and 12,000. So we're seeing the use of Lake Iroquois beach drop significantly. And I can tell you why is that although we're using Bensic, helping use Bensic barriers, mat that goes onto the ground to reduce the weed population, this stench and the visual impact of that is significant. And the smell is significant by the end of the summer season. And so here's a good picture of a little, again, public beach area here, access area, the boating access area here. The dark areas in amongst the water is milfoil. We're about 70 acres of milfoil in the or almost 200 acres that Lake Iroquois encompasses. So significant amount of, and I'm talking about a significant amount of milfoil in amongst that 70 acres. As the summer goes on, it gets worse. And this is just on the beach end. And because of the public access, as you look down the lake, all these brown spots along the shorelines, but even in the middle of the lake are highly affected by milfoil. So we've got a significant amount of work to do, and we are going to, thank you, Roger. We're going to the state in January, hopefully, to ask for the title of what can be referred to as a lake in crisis, like Lake Carmi did. And what that does is it potentially opens up opportunities to obtain federal money, we're hoping, to help with this problem. I'm coming in front of you tonight in a multiple faceted way to request for the fiscal year 21, the opportunity of getting or requesting $15,000 for this next funding period. In the past, in the last few years, we've requested $7,500 for the last few years. We're working on different projects on the lake to, number one, prevent any further problems. And I don't know how some people might think that's kind of crazy, but there are over 50 waterborne invasives in the state of Vermont right now. And as you probably read, Lake Dunmore a month ago had seen the introduction of zebra mussels in that lake. Our greeter program that is at the public fishing access area is literally inspecting boats and water vessels on Friday afternoons, Saturdays, and Sundays. We're one of two highly recognized greeter programs in Vermont because of our efforts, because of your funding mechanisms and efforts, I might add, because we are well supported by the town of Williston when it comes to our employment of individuals. And but that greeter program, we're using a hot water boat wash station, one of two hot water stations in the state, and that's preventing problems and further problems. So we've had on the weekends, so we only are doing weekends during the months of June, July, and August, but we've had over 800 water vessels come through our hands during that time frame, and literally had washed 160 of them. And so we're hoping to expand the program so that we can go a full day on Friday, and will be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and that's, to be honest with you, when most of the boat traffic comes in. And so we only have two invasives in, waterborne invasives in Lake Iroquois, and that is the milfoil problem and pondweed. And we'd like to keep it that way. So with that said, our multiple faceted approach is that we're going to continue with the boat wash station, the greeter program. We're going to continue with the benthic barriers that are used, the mats that are used in the water around the heavy trafficked areas of the lake, so that we can keep the spread of milfoil to a minimum. We're going to continue with what's called DASH, diver-assisted suction harvesting, and that is one of a requirement that the state, no matter whether we're going to use a herbicide or not, we're still going to have to use the suction harvesting to help mitigate the continued spread of the problem. And so we've got a lot of work ahead of us and a lot of effort to just maintain the problem that we have, and that's kind of silly to sound that way, but, we don't want it to get any worse. And we could have a lot worse problems because if we did have an introduction of other invasives. So, so with this whole program that we're asking for you to consider is that $15,000 is going to be a small amount of money that we're going to potentially spend over the next 5 years. We could be looking at almost a $250,000 expense for if we do go through the herbicide plan. But it's got to be a multi-faceted approach. You've got to use all those different opportunities also. So we can only treat up to 40% of the lake at one time if we do pursue the herbicide. And treating it means that DASH, the benthic barriers on the bottom, and the herbicide all can only be covering 40% of the lake at one time. So it's going to take us a number of years to go through this process. And so we've got a lot going on. We're fortunate to be working with your staff, with Bruce Hoare and the Lake Iroquois Recreation District, working on different projects. Bruce has been instrumental in working on a scoping project where we're going to potentially redevelop BB Lane, where we're going to work on runoff and environmental issues on BB Lane. It's a heavily traveled road, and so we've just gone through the scoping project to be able to identify the project, and hopefully we will come back and be able to share with you that we've gotten funds from different opportunities to help redesign and put a shovel in the ground of on that road. But that's a project that is underway also. I have to tell you that we really have formed a great relationship with Lake Iroquois Recreation District, something that hasn't happened over the years that has happened in the last 5 years, where 2 of our board members are now board members of the Lake Iroquois Recreation District. So we've got a lot of different projects together, working together, and that's a great thing. As you know, there's almost 200 acres of public land there that's used by many different individuals in our community, and after living on that lake for 60 years, I feel it's one of our best resources in upper part of Vermont, and I want to make sure that we protect that, continue to protect that. But we've got a lot of work to do in the process. So with that said, I will be back in front of you to share a lot of different information as we move forward. We're just at the incubation stage of it. We really hopefully are going to be able to have some great news to be able to share with you in a month from now. But we really have a lot of work to do before the people that I'm working with in this process are working hard to make this happen, and before we make any decisions. So, Roger, did I miss anything? What questions do you have? I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you, and as far as the herbicide, you know, we're working with Misha from the state, from DEC. We're working with a contractor that handles majority of the applications of chemicals in the aqua chemicals throughout the country. So we're working with them. They're called Solitude. One of the contractors that we're working with is the Dash contractor, AB Aquatics, out of New Hampshire. And he was at our lake they were at our lake for 6 days with 3 divers this summer. And Bob, that owns the company, said to us that this is the worst lake he's seen in a number of years, and that he appreciates the opportunity working with us, but feels that there's really a limited amount of control that he can provide without some kind of chemical application. So.
We appreciate you coming to us with the news, not good news,
Yeah.
but certainly it's a valuable asset to not just our town, but the surrounding towns as well. Just a quick question from me, of the amount of money that we appropriated for the current fiscal year, were you able to use that money?
We haven't gotten the money from you yet, but the different opportunities that we have had this summer and through the course of the last year have been, we've been using monies from previous years in anticipation that we were going to be working on this herbicide project potentially. And so, to be honest, we've been trying to set aside money for the different opportunities. And so we have used a fair amount of that money for the Dash. We spent $6,600 on the suction harvesting this summer. And so, yes, to answer your question.
Good. Good. Other questions from the board?
Keep plugging.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, got a couple if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
Jeff, no.
I guess the 15,000 request, which is basically double what I think was
Yep.
in last year's budget. If you had to give a one sentence answer for what does that buy, you know, the town, how would you respond?
I would say, if anything, it's buying the opportunity for generations to come to be able to use that lake. We're in a crisis mode right now, and I think we're not far from losing that lake.
Okay.
And that's, seeing what's happened just in the last 5 years compared to a number of years ago, I'm nervous about that.
Okay, good, thank you. And did you ask the same of Richmond and Heinsberg?
We've asked the Richmond,
Not the same amount, but
No, no,
doubling the
yeah.
previous, yeah.
this year, for this 21, we've asked for $1,000 from Richmond, but plus they also provide us $3,200 for the plant survey that we do every 2 or 3 years. And so they have given us that opportunity to do the plant survey, which allows us to go in and look at the native species that are remaining in the lake. And we're losing native species in the lake every year. And we're down to, I believe, 37 native species. Now, ecologically, the lake is not going to survive if the species continue to diminish. And so the Conservation Commission in Richmond has been generous to give us that money. Heinsberg, we have asked for $15,000 also. We asked for $7,500 from them for the last 2 years also. So,
And this concept of the lake in crisis and, that didn't come out right. Comparing Lake Iroquois to Lake Carmi, very interesting concept. Do you see that having, because I know there's been a lot of work and money
Yep. A lot of,
thrown, maybe it's not the, what's a better word than thrown? What's that?
Invested.
So, there you go. At Lake Carmi. And so is that sort of the concept here?
the concept here is that they're dealing with a little, quite a different
Beast, yeah,
crisis.
yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, no, we're not gonna be using that same concept, but we're not gonna sit back and watch the lake
Good.
continue to deteriorate. And that's what our efforts are gonna focus on.
And when you mentioned the aquatic species, is that the Darien report?
The Darien report,
So
Larry.
I
Yep.
actually got a copy of the interim report.
Yep,
Somehow I'm on some
exactly.
UVM
Yep.
research mailing list.
Yeah,
And I'm very curious about a comment
okay.
in the interim report, and I just wondered if you can help shed some light on it, where it reads under results, the number of species, aquatic species greatly exceeds the 15 typically reported for moderately productive lakes in our region, and indicates good water quality in a variety of habitat types. That sounds positive to me. Why would they put that wording in this report when I think the reality is the lake is very different?
Yeah. Good question.
Okay.
And that's a question that we'll ask Larry. Do you have any? I don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
good, a good question. The
Okay.
written report, his written report will be to us hopefully in the next week, and we'll be able to, it will shed some light on that.
A more definitive or clarification about what exactly
Yep.
that means. Yeah,
Yep.
okay, all right. Well, good, well, thank you. I
Yeah.
very much appreciate the very thorough report
Yeah,
that you just gave us.
yeah.
One of the things I'll be curious about in the future, though, is the downsides of the proposed chemical.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. And you know the difficulties that we went through in the last process, and
Sure.
the whole DEC, management style has changed, and so we expect to see that have an impact on our process, and so we've got a lot of work to do.
Let me just add to that, those 4 lakes that Chris mentioned that had used Priscilla Core, they have done final reports on that and have had very positive results. And in fact, Lake Maury, whenever you apply this, you cannot allow water to be consumed for at least 48 hours. It has to be tested every 48 hours. And you can't start drinking until it passes a certain, quality test, parts per million. Two parts per million.
Yeah.
Lake Maury did their first test after 48 hours and was already clear.
And that-
So,
By clear, you mean do non-detect?
right,
For the chemical.
able to
yeah.
drink
Yeah.
it, able to drink it in 48 hours. So, I mean, to me, that's a very safe product to use.
Okay. Any further questions?
Thank
If
you.
not, we'll be looking forward
Thank
to
you.
seeing
Thank
you
you.
in January. We'll be just starting our budget deliberations tonight, so, well, thank
We
you.
appreciate being here.
Thanks.
Thanks again.
Yeah, I would.
I don't believe that our representative for the Lake Iroquois District is here tonight. And so we'll postpone that report until another date. We'll go on then to the Chittenden Community Television Annual Report, and I think we have Megan O'Rourke with us tonight, the channel director. Welcome. We do have your written report to us, so thank you.
Great. So I'm Megan O'Rourke. I am the channel director at Channel 17, part of CCTV. For those of you who don't know, CCTV is the parent organization that has the contract with the Channel 17 trustees to run that project. Thank you to, I used to sit in Scott's seat running the camera, so thank you to Scott. And we have great thanks to Ginny Lyons, who's our trustee, who represents you all. Eric has been a great partner to work with, producing programs and also really helping to keep the relationship, keep us informed about what's going on and what you want us to be covering here. As you know, the contract allows for us to cover 3 meetings a month for the town of Williston. That's 36 meetings in a year, which we've calculated to be about, and it's in your sheet there, somebody can give me the number, 25,000, somewhere in there. With declining cable revenues, I can start with just saying, do you want to ask questions, or do you want me to go through the report a little bit?
Just to hit the
Okay.
headlights.
Okay. So as you know, cable revenues have been declining. We also had a reclassification of monies from Comcast, and a large part of our budget is provided by cable subscribers in exchange for the use of the public rights of way. And that decline in revenue and a decline in how Comcast reported their income pressured us to move forward with approaching municipalities to ask for money. So at this point, we get about 86,000 from municipalities around the 7-member municipalities that we provide services for: Essex, Essex Junction, parts of Colchester, Williston, South Burlington, and Winooski. And you all have been contributing 12,000 to that, and we're back this year to ask for a 5% increase. It was an initial jump, and now we're expecting, with the recommendation of the trustees, that we come back and ask for small increases. We are also, part of what we do as Channel 17 is support the work of CCTV to do advocacy work. And so we have been in the legislature this year in a summer study committee to find different ways to support the work of PEG access. So over the last 25 years, this assumption that we have public meetings and that we record them, and not only record them, we now make them live so folks can watch them, which you may say, well, how many people want to watch live? But when they do want to watch live, if there's something, we have the infrastructure in place, we understand how to do it. Most of the time it works. And we also archive your meetings and in triplicate in various locations and make them available to folks. Along with that, we also do election programming. Many of you have been in to participate in those forums and other community events. So another big piece that we're looking at having to address this year is that we are no longer going to be Channel 17. So through, when we renegotiated our contract with Comcast, we asked to be put on the Interactive Program Guide, the IPG, which allows folks to be able to find us on their, using their systems. Some of you are nodding your head. Some of us are still in the dark.
Been a huge issue,
Yeah.
hasn't it?
It's a huge
Technologically
issue.
impossible.
Yeah. And the Public Service Board said, yes, you must, and Comcast said, no, we can't. It's $3 million to do that. And through a mediated settlement, we are going to be on the Interactive Program Guide, but it means we have to give up Channel 17 on Comcast and move up into what's called a PEG neighborhood in the thousands. So we'll be somewhere in March in the will be 1070 or 1080, and so we will no longer be 17 on Comcast. So that sort of is the summary. I'm wondering if you have any questions, and we'd really love to hear from you all if you have feedback from the community about the services that we provide.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I would love to, if you have feedback from the community about the services that are provided.
Questions, comments?
I'd make a comment. The last time, this last year, I was running for re-election to the select board and went door to door, and a number of people would talk to me about watching the select board meetings on the program, and I was a little surprised and honestly a little curious what the heck these people were doing with their lives that they were watching our select board meetings. But no, it was actually the people, it was more than one person that surprised me with that, and the level of involvement that they knew about, or the level of detail that they had from watching was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So it's used.
Yeah.
That's good.
I have the same basic comment, a little different flavor, and that is the concept of making our meetings as publicly accessible as possible is, I think, just a paramount thing that we need to do. We is that you can lead a horse to water, you just can't make it drink. Well, we've done whatever we can to make the water available to the horse. Now the question is will they drink? And we have to provide those opportunities. And as you look tonight at our audience, I mean, we're about to start our budget period. We're about to have, I assume, I haven't seen it yet, but I assume it will be over a $10 million budget.
Yeah.
That's huge. This room ought to be filled with people letting us know what we're doing right and what we should be not doing because of the budget. And so having that avenue, the public access TV avenue, I think is critical.
Yeah.
It's not an insignificant price tag, but it's a cost I think we have to be willing to bear to make it available.
And we welcome other ways of, we're now in the non-analog age. I've been there long enough to have gone through when we were just on cable. That was it, right? And so now we are on multiple cable channels. In Burlington, we have, Burlington Telecom's given us an HD channel and a live meetings channel. We have our YouTube channel that we support. We do marketing, which is an entirely new ball of wax for the whole nonprofit world to support in promoting. So we welcome other, if you have other suggestions and avenues for how to connect the people of Williston, specifically around the budget hearings or, any other events of importance. And Eric has done a great job, you know, with What's Up Williston, making it sort of engaging. I just was looking at your views and they range, you know, you have 117 on one, which, you know, we're not in it for the ratings, but we are, if you had 117 people in here, you would be, you know, it would be exciting, so.
Well, unfortunately, when you're looking for ideas, especially in the digital age, you're
Yeah.
looking for somebody who is probably even pre-analog. So you really ought to look to others for advice about how we can increase our ability to get into people's radar screens and so they know where they can go to find out what they need to know about the town.
We should, I think, find a way that we can advertise, and you could advertise, that we're on the air tonight. And we will be, you know, every Tuesday night from now until end of January. So for the important things of the budget, now, there are other important things that people will turn out for on an individual basis or a community basis. But I think we need to figure out a way to advertise ourselves better.
People must think you're doing a good job.
Other questions or comments? Yes.
I was curious as to what basis the contribution for each community, how is that calculated, I guess the question.
So you're not the first person to ask that. Winooski also had that question, as you might imagine, because it's a per capita. So we have thought and would like to move forward with them to talk about how to really think of this also as a regional service, which it is. 3 meetings a month was a guideline that the trustees gave in the foundation as a baseline that everybody gets. And then other communities that have a higher contribution of cable subscribers based on confidential numbers that the cable company gives us, and then we configure it. South Burlington and Burlington get a few more. Does that sort of answer it?
So, well, only partially, is the current formula based on population?
It is based on, yeah, yes, it's based on population.
I see.
But it doesn't, but nobody gets less than 3 meetings a month.
But your actual costs for producing each meeting are the same regardless of the
Exactly.
population, so.
Yeah, that's the rub. Yeah.
Thanks.
Good, well, thank you very much. We
You're
always
welcome.
appreciate you
Thank you
coming in.
all. And I'm going to hand out some invitations that were drawn up by Lauren Glenn Davidian for our holiday party that's coming up.
Oh, great, thank you.
Nice.
You're all welcome to attend.
Good, thank you. So we're on to line item transfers for 2020, and that, Rick, I think you're probably going to talk about that.
Actually,
Shirley?
either Eric or Shirley, we hadn't
Okay.
really. But I will say that this is part of a policy that was adopted by the select board long ago, and it allows for a little bit of flexibility, adapting to salary adjustments, because the time when we're doing the budget, we don't necessarily know what those adjustments are. So anyway.
Rick, I was really just gonna say what you just said, instead of posting the merit pay in the actual departments, it's calculated, put in the discretionary fund, and this is the mechanism to release that budget allocation back out to the specific departments, which are already receiving the, merit pay increase in their department budgets anyway. So it's really just a matter of taking the salary budget times the 2% merit increase, and that's how we are coming up with a line item adjustment by department.
Simple enough. Questions or comments?
Just, my only question is as I went through the various titles, for lack of better words, for instance, planning, conservation, some of them say wages, so that's pretty clear, it's about wages. when it doesn't say wages, for instance, it says planning or conservation, should I think of that as wages, though?
It's all wages.
It's all
Yep,
wages,
yep.
100%
It's based on
wages.
wage budget, but good point.
Yeah, okay.
That's the only thing that line item transfers are allowed for are wage adjustments.
I didn't realize that. I thought
absolutely.
I thought we could do other,
Oh, I suppose we could, but the policy doesn't provide for that, and we've never really saw the need for that, because we
Okay.
felt it was important for all other line items to protect what was actually budgeted, regardless of how much was being spent. The difference with the wages are, particularly as it relates to when we're in negotiations, it's better to kind of put the money into a single pot rather than to kind of show the unions how much we think we're going to settle for.
okay.
And so, but when we are actually doing the budget, it's better to reflect in those salary line items what the actual final cost was.
Okay.
So for that, that's the only exception we have to that rule.
So, sorry, I can't believe at this stage of my select board career, I'm asking what is actually a fairly basic question. So when we do, for instance, we know that a line item in the budget is going to be over budget. Let's say it's, let's pick one of my favorites, chloride, salt in the winter. And it's a big snow year, and so our salt budget is blown. How do we handle that?
Well, we're overspent on that line item. Generally speaking, though, I think, since I've been here, I don't think any department has overspent their bottom line for the department. But there are various line items that are either overspent or underspent.
Yeah,
And so when a department, and Public Works is a good example, because they just have no way of knowing what the winters are going to be like. If they're having a very bad winter where the salt's over budget, the overtime's over budget,
right.
and the chloride is over budget, then they will, towards the end of the year, stop, discretionary spending in certain areas to allow, and one way they frequently is done is the retreatment, because that usually gets done
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
spring or in summers. So Bruce, who is our current director, will just not spend in those areas if he knows that we're overspent in other areas, so that the bottom line won't be over budget.
okay, good, thank you.
Any further questions? A motion then would be needed.
I'll move to approve the proposed line item transfers as presented.
Second.
Is there a discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed and no abstentions? Thank you, and then we'll move on to both of the budgets, the capital budget and the general fund operating budget. Rick?
Well, this is not my normal presentation this year. Partly because we don't have the budget completely done at this point. We've had a number of somewhat unusual challenges this year. Most of them in the finance office. Shirley's been doing a great job for us, but this is her first year going through the budget, so she's having to learn it from the bottom up. And as you might imagine, takes extra time. In addition, the finance office has been struggling with an issue that is, well, unusual, and we've never faced it before. We found out several months ago that we've been in violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act as it relates to the calculation of overtime. We're in good company. Most towns are in violation. There's only a couple that we know of that are actually doing anything or have done anything about it at this point. Most others are blissfully unaware of what is required. And it relates to what is included in the base pay when you're calculating overtime. And this relates only to hourly paid employees. But we found out that we have something called longevity pay, which is paid once a year for those who have been here a long time. We have something called payment in lieu of for medical insurance. And for the police department, there is a shift differential. In the past, those have not been included in the base pay for the purpose of calculating overtime. The Fair Labor Standards Act, it turns out, requires that it is to be included. This creates a nightmare when trying to calculate payroll, because some of these things are only given once a year. We're gonna have to change that. Some of them are given every pay period, depending on what schedule they work. There is no software program that will take this and calculate it for you, so we have to create our own Excel spreadsheet. And we had to do it going back 2 years for all the hourly paid employees. So I think Shirley has just recently completed the calculations, and we're submitting it to the Labor Department. Is it the Labor Department?
Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division. We are going through I'll say voluntary compliance program with them.
No formal complaint's been filed against us because we caught it
Yeah.
before a formal complaint was issued, but anyway, it's been extremely time-consuming, and it will continue to be time-consuming moving forward. Not as time-consuming as it has been, because we had to do all the calculations going back a couple of years, but that you have to go through every single pay sheet, pay for every 2 weeks going back 2 years, and for all those employees. Anyway, that's one of the things, and there's other issues too, but that's kind of an unusual one. And then I've had some personal matters that I had to address, so we put it all together, and we just didn't have the time to get everything together. I saw the final number, the bottom line number, like 4:30, 5 o'clock this afternoon. And so that just did not give me time to totally absorb what was going on here and produce all the documents. But I do have a very quick verbal summary. And what I have included in your packets is like a 10-page, or maybe it's 11-page, with the summary of the capital budget for next fiscal year. What we'll do is, you can keep these copies, and then we'll put the budget books together before the end of this week, and then we'll include these copies in your complete budget book, which you can pick up Thursday or Friday, depending on when we get it. So, and we'll have the capital budget done as well. So my verbal overview of the budget will be abbreviated, since I haven't had time to do my thorough analysis that I usually do, but I do have a couple general observations, which you can easily see in this summary. The first is that the expenditure increase that's proposed for all the departments combined is 1.4%. And there's a whole host of things that affect that. Some are increases in the budget, some are decreases. And we'll go through those as we go through each department budget. We have included funding for increased hours for a position in the library. We've also included funding for moving a part-time position in the recreation department to full-time. It would be a program coordinator position. Right now, it's a one-man show, and there's increasingly limits to what that one person can do. He does, I mean, you look at the offer of programs we have, and it's fairly extensive, but with a program coordinator, it'll give us a little more backup, and as well as, I think we can offer an even wider range of programs. Let's see, so those are the only two positions that I'm aware of that are new. All the other, we're not proposing any changes in service levels, although again, there are some minor issues here and there as to how we provide those services, and we'll go through those as we go through each department budget. There's also there's more issues in some respects on the revenue side. There's some revenues are up and some are down. For now, I did a quick estimate on the property tax rate, and right now it's showing just under a 0.5% increase. That's subject to change as we go through reviewing both the expenses and revenues, but I've made a number of assumptions, which, we'll see. One, by the way, on the expense side of the 15,000 that's requested by Lake Iroquois is in the budget. I don't know about the 12,000 for the channel.
Additional 600 for
It's
that?
12,000, not the 12,006 she talked about today. Yep,
We'll have to maybe look at that.
yep.
As in the past, I'll provide you with a running list of changes and possible changes moving forward. We've also done a little bit of reorganization. Again, we'll go through that. One major example is the finance department had been within the manager's office. It's really its own department, and so we pulled it out as its own department. And it includes the lister's office, the treasurer's office, and the payroll and accounts payable. So that's,
So is that the reason why the town clerk's expenditures appear to be going up while the,
I'm not sure.
yeah. That one just stands out. I'm not saying there isn't a legitimate, it stands out. in
Yeah,
that.
that's the kind of detail that I haven't yet had a chance to look at. I saw the numbers, but I said,
Yeah.
oh, well, that's interesting. We'll have to take a look at that. I did boost the local options tax this year a fair amount. I think I took either a 3-year or 5-year average of, and so I think moving forward, if we can kind of keep to that, it'll kind of even it out a little bit, because it'll be going up and down, certainly, it will be going down at some point in the near future. I can't tell you when, but if I could, I'd probably be better off having a different kind of work. And the fund balance is an interesting one too. I've, in the proposed budget, I've actually ratcheted it back a little bit. I'm feeling like we're becoming over-dependent on that. And I think if we want to bring it down further, we Shirley's still doing the analysis on this. We're gonna have to, I want to see if we can find other ways of bringing that down without building it into our budget. For example, if we wanted to get rid of, that's not the way I'll use Jeff. That's not the way I wanted to make it sound.
Yes, yeah.
Anyway, there's, for one example is we could maybe pay cash for something like the bridge repairs, or the culvert repairs in Marshall rather than borrow. That would bring it down and save future money.
So your proposal is that the fund balance will have more money in it under this?
I don't know yet. I don't have that analysis. I'm just nervous about building it into the operating part of the budget. I'm definitely not opposed to trying to bring it down. We just have to be, because in the past, we've used it for one-time capital projects. Well, I'm starting to run out of those.
Yeah.
There are a few that I've budgeted. I've also, the other thing that's on the revenue side is host town funds. We've been kind of spending at too high a rate for that as well, so I have to ratchet that back down, because generally we only get maybe 330,000 or something. We're spending close to 400,000 this year, and the last couple of years it's been in that range, and we can't sustain that, so I kind of have to ratchet that back down. And the plan is to do that over several years. So there's a lot of different moving parts on the revenue side, but
I was just thinking back to our select board retreat with what Jeff Carr was saying, so, but it's.
Well, right, if what we're working from is the select board policy. If the select board wants to change that policy, then we can certainly take a look at that as well. But I think there's room, certainly to use a fair amount of fund balance in this budget. We just have to be careful about not becoming over-reliant on that.
I thought was interesting about taking what Jeff Carr said, it'd be different. He believes we're heading into a recession. It would be a different story if we were hearing from him, we're on our way out of the recession. And it's the end of the recession that I think causes me to have, feeling similar to Ted's.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we don't have that analysis done yet, but we will by Tuesday, I would say. So
And I assume that's a big part of the reason why we got such a great review from the Ethan Allen Institute. Yeah.
So that's pretty much it as far as my overview. Like I said, it's abbreviated. I don't have all the little graphs and tables and everything at this point, but we will have that for our meeting Tuesday. And so we'll go from there.
Questions for Rick
Oh,
before?
Eric's one.
Just a reminder, the meeting Tuesdays at Williston Woods
At
at
6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, yes.
I'll send a reminder.
Yeah, that's-
6?
Yes,
Yeah, that's
6,
6.
yeah.
And to the board's questions earlier about kind of outreach piece for the budget meetings, my plans to start, I'll be putting out a lot of information at the end of this week about the upcoming meeting Tuesday and the schedule for review. I'll put that out in a number of different areas and make the meetings available, share the links after they're recorded. And we'll also have a piece of software we're trying out where we'll enter the budget proposed numbers and people can look at those and interact with it that way. Now that we have the numbers, I can dig into the software a little bit more and see how we may want to use that, so. Certainly open for any suggestions from the board for other ways to engage folks there.
We've, have several videos that we already produced that we can reuse. We have one on the calculation of the tax rate. We have one on the budget process. And we'll do another one again, as we always do, on the budget itself. And I think there was a third or fourth one we were talking about, but, well, anyway.
We did a survey last year about topics, and those were the top topics people were interested in. That's all I have.
We'll be getting through the review process faster than we normally will.
Yeah.
So, pretty much by the end of this month, we'll have met with most of the departments.
That's great.
Whole month of January to do. And there'll be a public hearing, of course, on the budget in early January as well.
Very good. Let's move on then to the sewer line easement acceptance.
It's an Eric thing.
Eric's gonna do that.
This is, board may recall, October 1st meeting, you accepted an irrevocable offer of dedication for a 64-foot strip of land, Coyote Run from that HOA. So this is, I was going to record everything and consulted with the town attorney. And he advised that we also asked the board to accept some sewer line easements for an active gravity sewer line that runs along the edge of two properties that should have been accepted back in 2014. Recommendation from council is that the board have a formal motion to accept these easements that will record in the land record. So just have a procedural item here for the board to consider for approval.
Questions for Eric on this?
So this was dedicated to the town in 2014, and we just didn't accept it?
Yeah, it was, I believe when Bruce was going through the paperwork, they should have been accepted back then when the development was put together at some point. But Public Works recommendation is to go ahead and accept these.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
If there's no questions, then a motion would be in order.
I'd move to accept the sewer line easement conveyed from the Coyote Run Homeowners Association as described in the executed deeds dated September 9, 2019, provided to the town.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to anti-displacement policy. Rick, are you doing this one?
Now, this is another Eric one.
Another Eric, okay.
Another procedural item. You may recall the towns received a pass-through grant from Vermont Community Development Program for resources for its location on Harvest Lane. So I'm working with Resources leadership team right now to prepare the conditions of grant acceptance. And one piece of this is the town's residential anti-displacement and relocation plan policy. It was adopted back in July of 2009. We're not recommending any changes. It still meets compliance from the state. But a condition for this funding is this policy needs to be adopted every 10 years. And it's been a little over 10 years since the town adopted this policy. So the question before the board tonight is to re-adopt this policy. And if so, I have a page for you to sign off on, and I'll submit this with our grant preparation.
Any questions regarding the process?
I have a question. I don't understand why we have to re-adopt something we never unadopted, but anyway.
It's probably hidden in the congressional inaction here. I'm looking at I noticed this earlier, that this is required by the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974.
Yeah.
So it's either the Nixon or the Ford administration is coming back to haunt us. I don't know which.
If we wish to take action, we have a motion.
Move to readopt the residential anti-displacement and relocation plan policy as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll take care of that. Then we go into the memorandum of understanding for the Dorothy Allen Memorial Library. Rick, I think you are doing this.
This is me, yes, it is. So, you may recall that we've had some discussions about this issue as it relates to the charter change. And as we began the discussion about the charter change, it seemed prudent to develop a written agreement or, this is memorandum of understanding, maybe it ended up being an agreement rather than a memorandum, but that's beside the point at this point. So we've created a draft, and I shared this with the library trustees. They have not had an opportunity to give me any feedback on it, although they seemed very receptive during the course of the meeting that I had with them. This draft has not been reviewed by legal counsel. My intent is to have it reviewed by legal counsel once I get the first round of input from both boards. And, we'll go from there. There is one key decision that the board will have to make at some point, probably, when is it, next week or the week after?
Next week, probably.
Next week, on the charter, because we're going to need to warn the second public hearing on the charter change. And if you'll recall, there's some language in there that we have proposed that the library trustees are not entirely comfortable with. I don't know if that's the best way of describing it, but anyway, that's my take on it. So whether or not this allows them to feel more comfortable or not, I don't know. But in any case, we need to go ahead and at some point either change the language or accept the language for the moment and go to the second public hearing. If the board does not change the language, it can still be changed, even after the second public hearing, I think. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I have to look back at procedure, but we would need to have another public hearing after that if we make a substantive change. We have to warn the second public hearing 30 to 40 days prior, and then we need to have that in place before the town meeting warning, 30 to 40 days before town meeting at January. So our timelines are converging here.
So anyway, that's the quick overview, and I guess my question is, are there any items on here that are of concern to the board that, at this point?
I have two things. One is, what is this town staff's position on the memorandum of understanding? So are you comfortable with it?
Yes, I drafted it.
I draft a lot of things I'm not comfortable with.
Well, no. I incorporated things that were of importance to me, and one was setting the pay rate for the library director. I know that the trustees had talked about that issue, but if the employee is going to be part of the organization that I manage, then they have to be part of the pay structure of the organization I manage. And I didn't hear any strong objections, actually, from the library trustees on that issue at the meeting, but then again, they didn't have an opportunity to talk about it on their own. There are some things in here that I intentionally put in here, knowing that it would be a concern to the library trustees. One is their outside fundraising. They like the idea that this protects the money that they raise so that it doesn't allow the town to reduce how much we give to them. It's in addition to. And that's the way it's always been anyway. And so I felt comfortable in putting that in here. And I know it was definitely appreciated by the library trustees. again, we've now not had any problem in any of these areas. And so what I'm trying to do, in my first draft here, was to pretty much lay out what the current practice is. And, you know, that's been the goal all along, because the relationship has been a good one. There are other communities where that has not been the case. In fact, there was one particular community, Hartford, that there ended up being a lawsuit between the trustees and the town, and it's over some of these issues that are covered in here. And the library actually won that lawsuit, but the problems have not gone away. And the town is doing its thing, and the library is not happy with some of the things the town's doing. But again, that's not the issue here, and I think this will help prevent problems moving into the future, because, you know, right now we have a certain group of library trustees. Well, that can change the next election. Right now we have a certain management group here. Well, that can change too at some point. So it's good to put this in writing. Anyway, are there any other questions?
Paragraph 5A, the library director shall be appointed by the town manager with the advice and consent of the trustees. I know what advice means, but what does consent mean in that context?
That means that they have veto power.
By what, a majority? Is it like the Senate, 2/3? I mean,
Well, I would say a majority vote of the trustees.
I'd recommend you put that in.
Okay.
Majority consent. You can advise and consent of the majority of the trustees.
Could pick up there.
Yeah, our charter change, that may affect the language, it was in the charter too, so. But that's a good suggestion.
That's all I had.
Question on page 1, you mentioned in your notes, should the arrangement with the Historical Society be addressed here? And that's under number 1, buildings and
Yes.
grounds. So there was a document that was approved by, I think, must be the town or the library and the Historical Society. Do you have copies of that? Should that be referenced here?
Well, I'm not, the town isn't part of that so much. I don't know.
When the library was being rebuilt or built with additions to it, there was some agreement at that time.
Well, I remember that.
Yeah.
I might even have a copy somewhere, but
We might just look at that and see if it should be referenced here.
I found something else that we may want to reference. It actually may involve a separate agreement. When the building, the oldest building, was gifted by Mr. Alling, apparently it was gifted to the town of Williston and the Williston School District.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So we're gonna have to address that somehow.
okay. So that's what you meant by who owns the building?
Right, well, yeah, that's part of it. It's clear that the land underneath the building is owned by the school district.
So is it a land lease that the school district has with the town?
Yes, we have a lease, and we pay for that.
Like a 99-year lease, or is it?
Well, no, the original lease, let's see here, I have it. The lease was amended in 2002.
That back to the days of Act 60?
Yes.
Yeah.
The original lease I have here as well. The original lease provided for a rent of $1. And that was 1985, it looks like, I think. 1985. The lease agreement that was redone, or amended, I should say, in 2002, was provide for lease termination date of 2035. And the rent was, looks like $16,500. That has not changed since 2002.
Per year? Per year, 16,000?
The school district has come up with a revised rate schedule, and I have tentatively agreed to it. I mean, it's obviously subject to the board because we haven't revised this yet. But it's a fairly large increase, but it's still far lower than I think market value. But the overall rates that the town has charged for the use of the school buildings is also going down dramatically. So overall, we're paying less, but for the lease for this one parcel, we're paying more. But in the library, actually, it included lease of something else in the library lease, and I don't know why it ever got included in there. But that's coming out totally, so their actual yearly cost for the library is going down a little bit. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. We shouldn't probably spend too much time on this tonight, but, so the concept is we had a lease with the Williston School District. The Williston School District was dissolved, and we're now part of the, I forget the name of it.
Valley.
The bigger school district. So the terms of that lease, the new school district has the ability to change that lease?
Well, I think there's a provision in here, each succeeding lease year can be adjusted, so it's not a fixed year.
Okay, so that has the ability in there to, okay. Okay,
And as I said, it hasn't been changed since 2002. And the change now is because the school district has kind of looked at all their different
Yeah.
towns that they serve and tried to make the arrangements somewhat equal. 'Cause
equitable across.
in the past,
communities.
Williston has been overpaying,
Yeah.
and other towns have been underpaying. And so they're trying to even that out a little bit.
So wait a second, we've been overpaying, other towns have been underpaying, but under the new agreement or the new fair way to do it, we're still paying more.
No, and I'm talking about all the different use payments, because we use their schools and their fields, and
Okay,
and
I
there's
see.
lots of trade-offs.
Okay, yeah, all
And
right.
so it's mainly the use of their buildings where our fees were over 100,000 a
Okay.
year, and they're going down
okay.
substantially.
I'll have to give this some thought. you know.
Well, you'll see the numbers when we get into the budget.
Okay.
But-
Oh, yes, we will, okay.
But we are getting a little off topic here. I just happen to, since Ted or whoever raised the topic about it was Terry.
Any other comments regarding the proposed document?
I
All right.
think it's going in the right direction, I think.
Yep.
So,
Okay, we will keep working on it then, and we'll see what comments the trustees have, and we'll bring back we'll have a version to send off to legal counsel as soon as we get the comments back from them.
Sure.
And we'll make a few changes based on the comments we heard tonight. Thank you.
Good. All right, down to the manager's report.
So, the culvert project, I have, in addition to what's in writing here, I have a hot update.
Oh, good.
Apparently, the contractor, a contractor, has been cleared to start doing some work on it. The work is just related to clearing, because the plan is to kind of build some access drives down to the stream bed from the South Burlington side. The work needs to be done on the Williston side, but the feeling is you can kind of reach across, because it's not a big raging wide river, it's a little stream most of the time. Certainly was raging after that last storm we had in Halloween. But anyway, the plan is to start that clearing work very shortly. And we're working closely with the state, and the expectation is that this work will all be covered by a federal grant. Meanwhile, of course, we are working on the permanent solution, and we expect to request a bond vote in March to approve the funding for Williston's share of that. And I think the only other thing I had is, there was an article in the Observer, or, I'm sorry, it was a letter to the editor in the Observer about our Justice Board, and it was, someone who had been allegedly fined for protesting. And what had happened is there were a group of protesters that ended up violating the law, and our department was forced to arrest them. And they were, I guess the deal was that they would pay restitution for some of the costs, because it's very costly. Our police department actually does not like having to arrest people because it costs, it creates so much paperwork and headache, and we know the charges are going to get dismissed, so, you know, it's just a nightmare. So anyway, these protesters acted in a way that our department was forced to arrest them, and they were required to pay restitution. And the writer of the article said that it was a fine, but and he also made reference to the fact that the Justice Commission's budget is supported as part of the police department. Well, that's partially true. The real fact, though, is that right now, almost no money comes from the town of Williston for the funding of that Justice Board. The vast majority of money comes from the Department of Corrections. And so, and restitution is, you know, we have violators all the time that pay restitution for, as part of the community justice process. So it was a little misleading, the way that the article was written, and we just wanted to correct that.
Was it a letter to the editor?
It goes back
This past one, it was like 2 or 3, that was 2 or 3.
November 7th was the,
Was it a Vermont gas protester?
no, this was, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, all I had. Eric, did you have anything?
Just one small thing, I may recall we updated you, we need to replace a number of computers to get up to Windows 10, and I picked up those computers today, so they came in earlier than expected, so we'll meet those deadlines of January.
So how many did you walk out with? Just out of curiosity.
They're all here safely.
What's that?
They're all here safely.
Yeah. And where did you purchase them from, just out of
We
curiosity?
get them, our managed services provider Open Approach is an intermediary with Dell to
Okay.
pricing, and then they set them all up for us. So
Yeah,
they
okay.
have a partner to work with.
Okay.
And the importance of this is that the older machines that we have use an older software that, or operating system rather, that is no longer supported, or won't be supported as of mid-January. And therefore, starting mid-January and later, it becomes a security hazard because it isn't supported any further.
I do not understand how software developed, like an Microsoft or Apple can get away with that. You know, you buy a car and there's a certain amount of time the car manufacturer has to guarantee that they'll supply repair parts. Doesn't seem to be true with computers. I don't get it.
I don't disagree with you, but
The reality of the situation is
it's, we're trying to up our game as far as security because there
you
are
have to,
increasing
yeah.
number of communities that have been hit by a variety of different things, so.
You have no choice, yeah.
So we have,
Is there any other business that you need to talk about tonight? If my recollection recalls that we have a new town assistant manager as of yesterday.
December 1st, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's right, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Wait, you dressed exactly the same, what's going on?
He looks similar too.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure to serve the town, and looking forward to continuing.
Good, yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Any other business?
Nope.
We're adjourned. Thank you all.